For your next project, we are going to be jumping into using some wire. And our idea behind the project is that we're making a minimalist-inspired animal wire sculpture. So this presentation I'm going to go through here is going to talk a little bit about the idea behind your project, and then it's going to be up to you following the video demonstration or looking up demonstrations online of how to make certain animals with wire. You can create your very own wire animal sculpture. So to start with, let's move on to our next slide here. So minimalism and art. This is a movement in art history that came about kind of in the early 1960s and lasted through kind of the end of the 1960s. And then since then it's kind of continued on with a term that's called postmodernism, or post-minimalism, I should say. So artists of the time were getting a little bit fed up with thinking that art had to look a certain way. And this movement with sculptors in particular, they thought, okay, sculptures don't necessarily have to look exactly like the thing that you're trying to represent. And it kind of opens up the doors too to making sculptures that could be more about ideas rather than physical things, that somebody would look at the sculpture and say, oh, that's an apple, or that's a car, and begin to kind of think more about how the sculpture kind of has a presence and how it makes them feel. For example, these large steel creations made by Richard Serra are known for being things that you walk within, and it kind of consumes you in a way when you're moving through it. And it became more about how the sculpture's presence made you feel rather than representing a thing. Even though if you look at the sculpture from the top, it kind of, in my mind, has more of like a floral type design for this particular one. But it's in a way using non-traditional art materials to make things that stand out as kind of being more unique and less traditional in their way of making a sculpture. Another artist, Eva Hess, that was pretty popular back in that era, began to use industrial materials and kind of broke the realm of what would be considered art even. So here on the left-hand side, we have a sculpture that from the outside looks really organized, looks like it's kind of like a piece of some kind of mechanical something, and these nails or pieces of metal that have been pushed through look so disorganized on the inside. Viewing it from the top, and it almost looks like fur to me, but all that organization has been turned to chaos in the middle of the piece. The other artwork here, it reminds me a little bit of a painting because it looks like it's on canvas and it would be hung on the wall. And the twine kind of makes me think of what canvas is made out of, which is fabric. And all of a sudden, these two paintings, which normally you would have separate in a museum, like one painting you just kind of see and then you move on to the next one, have become connected, and they've been connected through this similar material that is normally what canvas is made out of. There's a quote here that I'll just say, and I'd like you to think about a little bit. So this is from Eva Hess. I think art is a total thing, a total person giving a contribution. It is, in essence, a soul. My inner soul, art, and life are inseparable. So in her approach to making art, it's all about being kind of part of the art that you're making and having it be very much an expression of what you're wanting to say. And I think in a lot of ways, if you can move beyond just making an artwork just for a grade or just for the purpose of, checking off a box, and think more about how art can kind of connect a little bit more with you and more with, maybe even the reason why you want to make it. And I think that's just a good quote to think about. Another artist of that era, and he started making work a little bit earlier, and I'd almost put him within more of an abstract expressionist type artist, even though he was working mostly with sculpture. He had this idea where, similar to the minimalism approach, where you could make a sculpture that looks almost like a contour line drawing. And with contour line drawings, someone might be taking just the very minimal amount of lines to create what it is that they're making. I've got an example here in the center, this guitar. That is a continuous line contour drawing, which is a challenge that artists do sometimes, where they never lift their pencil or pen off of the paper to make something. And Alexander Calder took that idea and made it into a way of creating wire sculptures. And so I've got a few examples right here on the screen, and on the next slide there'll be some more as well. But this is just, a different approach to using wire even as a way of making art, which prior to that point, wire was considered, something you just use for making fences out of, or that you'd use inside of conduit to make electricity flow from one thing to another. So you kind of broke the realms of how wire is used even with art. Here's some more examples. My goal for you is to think about how your wire sculpture can be viewed from more than one just angle. Then, if you think of a drawing being very flat and you'd only see it from one angle, try to push it so that your sculpture at least has some dimension to it. Consider this this head that's being shown here on the right-hand side of the screen. Even though a lot of the details right near the front, imagine spinning this wire sculpture and seeing it from different angles and how it actually would give you kind of a feel of what the face looks like, even if it was viewed from the opposite side. So your project is a minimalist inspired animal wire sculpture. So for this one, I want you to take the idea of line drawing and thinking about how you can make a line drawing sculpture of that animal that you choose to make. The process for making that animal is going to be up to you. I have a video demonstration on making a basic armature that would normally go on the inside of a sculpture, and it can be used to make pretty much any type of animal. And you can add to that armature the details that you need to based on the animal that you're making. Here's the process. Pick an animal that you'd like to represent. Start with 2 lengths of wire that are roughly 18 inches. So if you think about maybe kind of from your elbow down to the bottom of your hand, that kind of length, cut off 2 sections of that. Usually you'd want to work with that thinner wire. It's a little bit easier to kind of mold and make into what you're making. That thicker wire you can use if you're hoping to kind of make larger lines. Just realize that it's a lot more tough of a material that it's hard to do kind of smaller things with it. There's a link in the presentation, but I'll also have it up on Schoology for you to watch on using those 2 lengths of wire that you've cut to begin making your project. In the end, just like we've done for our earlier projects, you're going to be photographing it from multiple angles and you'll be turning it in. Okay, so there's the link for the video right there. It's also right here in the presentation, and you'll find it on Schoology within the project folder for this project. On this last slide, I also have a link to another video that talks about different ways to connect wire together. And off to the side here on this slide, you'll also see some basic wire techniques. And kind of these lines over here represent what's done with the wire. So you can make shapes. You can bend the wire a certain way to kind of give a form. Twisting and braiding work. When you're trying to connect the wires together, I think the best is to twist. Whether or not you do twisting where it comes out on an end like this example, or I even think it's better this way, where you have it kind of twist and wind right into the sculpture itself. Alright, so that's your overview of this next project. You can find this presentation and you can find the video demonstration right in on our Schoology page. Enjoy it, have fun.